unabashed,
the most unpredictable,
becomes a headline,
the most volatile,
outrageous behavior,
unsubstantiated narratives, a battle of personalities.
Welcome to Grand Tamasha, a co-production of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Hindustan Times. I'm your host, Milan Vaishnav. On Sunday, the highly anticipated results from 5 state assembly elections were announced. These results come at a time of great uncertainty in India as the country is in the throes of a devastating second wave of the coronavirus. It is racking up nearly 400,000 new cases every day. To help us make sense of these elections and how they fit into the broader Indian political landscape, I'm joined today by the journalist Aditi Phadnis. Aditi is the longtime political editor and columnist at the Business Standard and one of the very few people I know who can write and speak knowledgeably literally about every single state or union territory in the country. I am so pleased to welcome her to the show for the very first time. Aditi, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much. I'm really overwhelmed and really happy to be there.
So, Aditi, before we get into the substance, I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to recognize the enormous stress the people of India are under at the moment, particularly those who live in Delhi, which has become, unfortunately, the epicenter of the pandemic. I know this is what we came to talk about, but could you just give us a brief sense of, what is life like right now in the city?
Well, I don't think there is not a single person who has not lost somebody from their immediate family or extended family. So everyone is trying to stay afloat in literally a sea of sorrow. Young people, I don't know how to describe it. It is, there is loss all around. People are going about their work stoically and but imbued with a sense of numbness. And all that we are grimly fighting for is to just stay healthy and just to be able to breathe.
I mean, there's a sense of helplessness one feels from being thousands of miles away, but our heart goes out to you and to all of our friends and family and others who listen to the show in Delhi, and hope that the crest of the wave is here and we start to see a recovery. Let me turn to the business at hand, which is the contests which were announced over the weekend. We're going to dig deeper into each of the elections, but maybe I should just start by asking you, as you step back and kind of assess the results from a kind of 30,000-foot level, what to you are the sort of 3 or 4 main takeaways of this particular round of assembly elections?
So the first is that the BJP was thought that it would do extremely well in West Bengal. They said they would get 200 plus seats. Many of their strong supporters even believe that. It has done well. From 3, it has gone up to 78 at last count. But it has not done as well as it thought it would. So there is a sense among BJP voters also that they have been denied. And that spirit is going to imbue their interaction with Trinamool Congress as well as everyone else, political leaders. And that is going to inform the relationship between the central BJP at the federal level and the state government going forward. Which is not essentially a very good thing because it's going to infect every decision that the federal government takes and the state government takes. We'll come back to this later in ways in the various ways in which it's going to affect politics. But in terms of the other big takeaways, as you know, the opposition was gasping for a new direction, and this might have come about now. I have a feeling that there's going to be a big upheaval in the way the opposition sees the government and the way it sees itself. And we are going to see some manifestation of this in the days to come, especially where if a call is given to previous congressmen, former congressmen to come together, and that strikes some resonance in the among the dissident congressmen who are asking for a more active Congress leadership. So that will be something to look forward to, because one reason why an upheaval, a recast of the Congress was given up or postponed was because of these assembly elections. So that's something that is on the cards. The total decimation of the left parties in West Bengal and their resurgence in Kerala is again something that we need to look at. We also need to look at some ways of their revival in Tripura, where, as you know, they were a formidable power till some years ago. And how the BJP is now going to recast itself and meet the challenge of a new resurgent non-Congress, non-BJP opposition, which may take new shape, we have to see. In Telangana, for instance, in the by-elections, the BJP candidate, the BJP had high hopes from Telangana. The candidate in the by-election has lost his deposit. Elsewhere in the country, in Tamil Nadu, for instance, the Pon Radhakrishnan, the former Union Shipping Minister, who was contesting the by-election in the Kanyakumari constituency, Lok Sabha constituency, has lost. So there is a sense that something is changing, and this round of elections heralds that.
So let me ask you first about West Bengal. For obvious reasons, the lion's share of media and political attention has been showered on this one state. We've seen the Trinamool Congress of Mamata Banerjee withstand an all-out onslaught by the BJP. Mamata's party notched 213 seats in an assembly of 294, while the BJP claimed around 77 seats. The left, it seems, has just won one seat, which, really, as you alluded to earlier, represents the culmination of a pretty stunning decline. Before we get into the factors at play on the ground, let me ask you a question about the stakes. Why was this election deemed to be so important for the Modi and the BJP in the first place?
It was important for a number of prestige issues. It was important because Mamata Banerjee was proving to be an enormous thorn in the flesh. After all, the same kind of prestige issue could have been used or could have been applied to the election in, say, Odisha or in Telangana or in Andhra Pradesh. But it wasn't. It was in Bengal because Bengal has, for a long, long time, been a kind of a horizon that the BJP has been unable to touch. And this time, rightly or wrongly, they felt they were within striking distance of some sort of political presence. This was partly also borne out by the Lok Sabha election, where they did fantastically well. In this election too, the BJP will hold its normal routine sort of discussion. But this election too, they have actually done pretty well, however much their adversaries might try to deny this. From 3 seats in the assembly to go up to 78 is no joke. The vote share, granular vote share data will come out fairly soon. They have capitalized, it seems at first blush, they have capitalized not just on the losses of the Trinamool, but also on the losses of the Congress. Because in a place like, this is the constituency of some of the biggest Congress leaders. They have wrested it from below their nose, and I think in areas where the in tribal areas and areas where the Trinamool Congress had done really badly in 2019, the BJP has grabbed those also. It has won, of course, some of the Trinamool seats. And Nandigram is a prime example. Some of the important Trinamool seats, but their area of uh, sort of high achievement is in North Bengal and in other those areas, those tribal areas, including areas like Alipurduar and North 24 Parganas and so on.
So getting to the result itself, in the end, in terms of seats, it was not particularly close. Nilanjan Sarkar had a column in the Hindustan Times where he chalked up Mamata's victory to two factors. Number one, an array of very popular welfare and cash transfer schemes. And number two, a very strong emphasis on women, including a concerted effort to ensure that the aforementioned schemes were delivered straight to women in households across Bengal. Do you agree that these were the two prime factors at play, or were there other things you think that helped turn the tide?
I think people who were Mamata-minded may have been in two minds, particularly after the BJP's onslaught, its appeals, its sort of referring or appealing exhortation to nationalist issues and so on and so forth. But I think what turned the tide strongly in Mamata's favor, we knew that she had an edge, that people were loyal to her. But I think what turned the tide were two issues. One was this outsider and Bengal pride issue. There were, after all, the BJP itself strongly protested when former Chief Economic Advisor Ashok Lahiri was asked to contest Alipurduar, and the local unit just revolted. They said, "We don't want him. He's an outsider." So, if that could happen in the BJP, I imagine it must have been a very strong feeling when Mamata addressed it and said, "You cannot let people from outside who don't understand the culture of Bengal to come and tell you what to do and what not to do." I think the second issue was candidate selection and the BJP's reliance on people imported from Trinamool. Many of these people were discredited. Some of them were frankly transactional. I mean, the reasons for their going into BJP were very clear. And I think she capitalized on this. And I think that also made some difference in the decision or last minute decision of people. But overall, I tend to agree with Nilanjan's assessment that people don't necessarily decide to vote one way or another at that point. They take a long view, and in that situation, I think the appeal to women, as well as the social welfare schemes that Mamata has done, plus the overall infrastructure changes that urban Bengal has seen, I think all that made quite a lot of difference.
So let's stay in the East for a second and turn to Assam. I mean, many political analysts thought this would be the state that provided the best opportunity for the Congress to get a win. I mean, after all, this is a state where the BJP has had to carry the particular burden of incumbency, but also it's a state where, there's been a fair degree of controversy over some of the BJP's key priorities, namely the Citizenship Amendment Act or the CAA. And yet we see the BJP alliance easily won re-election. In fact, it dropped just 3 seats from its previous performance. What are people saying about why the Congress so badly underperformed here?
I'm not sure if the Congress underperformed so badly. They did an alliance with the AIUDF, which is essentially, I mean, you can call it what you want, but it's essentially a Muslim party. And they also did an alliance with the Bodo People's Front, which is another group which was earlier an ally of the BJP and then crossed over and joined the Congress. It split into two, and the supposedly more popular faction joined the Congress. Now, it's true that the Congress threw everything it had in the Assam election, expecting that it would win and be able to form a government. It had a setback right in the beginning in November 2020 when it lost Tarun Gogoi, the former chief minister, who was one of the most, who was both a problem as well as the solution to the Congress, because he was old style, but there was no one who knew the Congress in Assam better than Tarun Gogoi. And he was, in a sense, the Lieutenant General of the battle, and they lost him. So, frankly, when I had a chat with his son, Gaurav Gogoi, who is an MP from Kolyabar, he was not very confident that the Congress was going to do that well. But he said, I'm going there and I'll put everything I have into making my party win. So the situation is that a united opposition was also not able to defeat the ruling BJP for a variety of reasons. Very few people have taken into account the fact that the BJP addressed the issue of microfinance death by debt, very late, but nevertheless addressed it in a very convincing way by bringing legislation that would finish. This is not a fact that is generally known, but microfinance is a huge problem in Assam. Partly because people are simply not able to pay. And it is, I mean, all parties had said that they would waive the loans of farmers, arising partly because of the microfinance issue in the first place. The first state that reported microfinance delinquency crisis was Andhra Pradesh, and they had to pass an ordinance to control the lending activities of non-banking financial companies, and this was followed by Assam. And this was a huge problem because women were. I mean, I saw on YouTube a procession taken out as early as 5th February 2020 in Dibrugarh. Thousands of women walking to the office of the magistrates in Dibrugarh and asking and handing over a memorandum seeking permission to commit suicide because of the conduct of recovery agents from microfinance. In response to this, the government passed a law actually violating RBI's RBI rules and making recovery agents' conduct and the conduct of non-banking financial companies even more stringent than it was earlier. So the problem is, the essential problem is regulatory design, but I mean, the India's microfinance sector is very well controlled and highly regulated, but the problem is also that people are simply not able to pay, and Assam has the highest number of delinquencies anywhere in India. So it's a complicated issue, but the government stepped in and said, we are going to stop this. And within days, with very little opposition, this was one of the, I think, last decisions that the government took before the elections, was to pass a law further controlling microfinance by state governments, which is completely illegal, frankly. So this was another issue. There were many other issues of, proximate issues like the crisis because of COVID in the tea plantations, the issues of swine flu, which has affected the piggery sector in the state which is a very big industry, and overall, problems of livelihood and existence. So I think all this led to the result that you got.
It's fascinating because the issues that you're speaking of generally have not featured very prominently in the commentary. Instead, much of it has been dominated by quote unquote cultural issues. For instance, we know that in Assam, the BJP has felt some heat on the Citizenship Amendment Act issue. Interestingly, in Bengal, the BJP dropped the controversial NRC, or National Register of Citizens, from its poll pitch. Now, obviously, it's very difficult to predict the future. We know in the present term, the government is consumed by the COVID pandemic. But as you kind of look over the horizon, how do you see the CAA NRC issues playing out? Do you think that they will once more return to the fore the closer we get to 2024?
They haven't gone away, but it also doesn't mean that they were not poll issues. I mean, Akhil Gogoi contested from Shivsagar constituency while still in jail and has won that seat, and by a very, very convincing margin of upwards of 9,000 votes. So this is after no campaign was held, and only he contested against only the BJP lady Surabhi. I've forgotten her second name. Rajkumar, I think. Surabhi Rajkumar from the BJP, who she had the field free, and yet he has won the seat. So I think the issue is very much there, but we should not decry the fact that while identity and social existence issues exist, there are also issues of livelihood, of delivery of services by the state, and people who are questioning all of this. So that could be one reason why respective parties. I mean, frankly, the Assam, if you look at the granular details of the Assam result, it is not that different from what it was in the outgoing assembly.
If we turn to the South now, clearly one of the most notable things to turn our attention to is the thumping victory of the LDF, or the Left Democratic Front, in Kerala. The LDF won 99 out of 140 seats, leaving just 41 for the UDF, led by the Congress Party. This is a state, and it's been commented upon throughout the last 24 hours, that has a decades-long record of consistently alternating between the UDF and the LDF. You can count on very few things in Indian politics, but political turnover in Kerala is one of them, come every 5 years. However, the left managed to break this cycle. I'm curious what you think is the prime reason. I've seen some people argue that, the left's victory really has more to do with its governance record. It doesn't have much to do with kind of Marxism or leftist ideology. How do you see it? How do you think they managed to break out of this 5-year cycle?
That is a very difficult question to answer, but this much I can say with some confidence. Kerala was the one state. I mean, maybe we should approach the question differently, which is, why didn't the Congress do well, and why did it do actually so badly? I think the answer lies, however dismaying it may be, the answer lies in the fact that Rahul Gandhi literally micromanaged this election more than any other election in the among all the assembly elections. There were several candidates, young people, not necessarily associated with political lineages. In a sense, Kerala was Rahul Gandhi's pet project laboratory, which is to promote young people who have no in that sense vested interests or stakes in the political system, and who are there only for public service. If we are to judge by the outcome, this strategy has been a spectacular failure. It's true that, I was talking to somebody from the Congress in Kerala yesterday, and they were saying that as a party, the party still has a structure. It will still continue to agitate. It will still continue to remain a strong opposition. But in this election, it hasn't performed well. Partly because of the spectacular performance of the LDF's delivery of state services, but also because young people who were fielded were perhaps not that well known in their areas, or were weighed less than the heft and the weight of the CPIM or the left parties. And that could be one reason, but we have to study this a lot more. I find that the Congress's setback in Kerala is very, very mysterious and needs to be studied more than any other state. Not even West Bengal, frankly.
But it's interesting, Aditi, because, it seems to me, based on what you just said, that the Congress is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because many people have said the problem with Rahul Gandhi is that he hasn't been actively engaged. He hasn't put his heart and soul in it. He hasn't been trying to upend the kind of crustified norms in the party and the way things are done. And here's a case where it seems, in fact, he has done many of those things, and the party has still fallen short.
So it's hard to answer that question. We don't know why. And even in Wayanad, his own constituency, the Congress hasn't done so well. So we need to go down to granular detail and find out why it is that and frankly, through the campaign, I didn't see the left front attacking the Congress in the way that they might have done in Bengal or anywhere else. Of course, in the past. This time, of course, they had an alliance. But they didn't really focus on the Congress in the virulent way that they might have. It was more, a gentleman's opposition kind of a way of looking at it. So maybe that is the reason why the Congress could not really be emerge as a spectacularly effective opposition. There was plenty to criticize. This is the first time that the right-hand man of the chief minister has been caught in a corruption case. And I don't know, we may see an enforcement directorate raid on the chief minister in the near future. It's not easy, it's not difficult to do enforcement directorate raids these days. So there was a lot to say, but I got the feeling that the Congress had held back somewhat, and I wonder why.
Interesting. Let me go next door now to Tamil Nadu. We saw the opposition DMK alliance claim victory. This was largely expected, I think, in light of the divisions and fractures within the ruling AIA-DMK. Tamil Nadu is another interesting state like Kerala, where we have seen regular swings between these two parties, the DMK and its arch rival, the AIA-DMK. Mr. Stalin, the son of the former chief minister of Tamil Nadu, Karunanidhi, is set to be crowned chief minister for the first time. Do you think that this election marks a kind of inflection point in Dravidian politics? Because we have a kind of passing of the baton as far as the DMK is concerned, and really a lot of question marks about where the AIA-DMK goes from here.
If you look at the outcome of the election, the AIA-DMK has done well, actually only in Konganadu, which is the area of influence of both the chief minister and the deputy chief minister. They have the big sort of chunk of their support or their seats comes from this area. The other, we have to understand that in Tamil Nadu, everything works on the basis of fronts and the fronts, alliances. And the AIDMK had an alliance with the PMK, the Patali Makkal Kachi, which represents the Vanyar community. The Vanyar community, PMK has also done extremely well in the areas where it is where the Vanyars are strong as a caste. So if you combine these two, this is the large chunk of the ADMK base now. They have done very badly in Chennai city, particularly in RK Nagar, which was, as you know, Jayalalitha's seat. They have done very badly in southern Tamil Nadu, which is the Kanyakumari area, and they have done badly in the upper reaches, the hilly regions of Tamil Nadu. So, what I'm trying to say is that the Congress and the ADM and the DMK alliance has done well in a secular kind of a way across, except in areas which are the area of influence of the Chief Minister and the Deputy Chief Minister, and of course the one-year community.
So let me zoom back out for a second here, because there are a number of questions more broadly about these results. And I want to ask you specifically about one which has really emerged through a series of comments that really commentators across the board have been making, which is about the independence of the Election Commission of India. The political strategist Prashant Kishore had this to say, quote, "I have never seen a more partial election commission. From allowing the use of religion to scheduling the poll and bending the rules, the ECI did everything to help the BJP," end quote. He went on to call the agency an extension of the ruling party. Do these criticisms have merit? Do you think that there is a kind of groundswell of feeling or sentiment that there is some kind of crisis of credibility, facing what is arguably, one of the most powerful elections agencies on the planet?
I feel a bit sorry for the election commission, because on the one hand, they are being asked, why did you hold these elections? You are a set of murderers. And on the other hand, they are being told, why didn't you hold the election to the Kerala Rajya Sabha seats? You have to hold it, otherwise we will hold you in contempt. The second comes from the Kerala High Court. The first comes from the Tamil Nadu High Court, where Justice Aditi Banerjee has come in for some sort of not exactly a rap on the knuckles, but strictures by the Supreme Court for the language that he has used.
The Election Commission did not take very kindly to his calling the ECI murderers.
That's right. So, which is really, I really don't know if you can say that for them. Now, for me, the test now will be the seat that Mamata Banerjee will have to contest from. The background is this. Mamata Banerjee has lost her Nandigram seat. She can contest from any seat in West Bengal as long as it's vacant within 6 months. There are 6 seats which are likely going to fall vacant. 4 are already vacant. 2 for which elections did not take place because the candidates candidates died from COVID. This is Shamsherganj and Jangipur, where the candidates could, the election was countermanded even before it took place. 2 seats where Lok Sabha candidates have contested and will have to resign, one or the other. Most likely they will resign from the assembly constituencies. So those 2 will fall vacant. And 1 constituency where the candidate contested the election, won, and then died. So this is a constituency called Kharda, not very far from Calcutta. So she can choose any of these to contest. But this is contingent upon the Election Commission ordering elections in the next 6 months. Otherwise, she will face the same kind of dilemma or crisis that Uddhav Thackeray faced when he almost had to quit his chief ministership because the governor and the election commission simply did not let him hold elections to the upper house, which, by the way, is an indirect election, in time. And he had to petition the prime minister, and the prime minister then had to call the governor, Mr. Koshyari, who is law unto himself, and who then had to be petitioned and coaxed into holding that election finally, allowing the election commission to hold the election. So the question is whether at the height of the pandemic and with all these rulings from various high courts across the country and the Supreme Court, whether the election commission will think it fit to hold elections, and if Mamata Banerjee has the chance to become chief minister. She's taking oath, I think, in the next day or two. She's gone to meet the governor even as we speak. But the fact is that she and Trinamool must be readying themselves to see in West Bengal a Bihar-like situation when Lalu Yadav was convicted of corruption and had to find very hurriedly a replacement and gave the chief minister's chair to his wife Rabdi Devi. So that situation may be very remote, but it cannot be ruled out. And in that case, I'm being very speculative here, but in that case, it's possible that her nephew Abhishek, who along with Prashant Kishore was the architect of the candidate selection and the strategy for the elections, becomes the next chief minister of Bengal, even though she's taking oath in the next 2-3 days.
It's a sort of a remarkable turn of events, right? You win a thumping victory, you lose your own seat, and now you have to roll the dice on a by-election, which may or may not happen within the prescribed time. Let me ask you about another broader theme, which is about the impact of COVID. Obviously, this is another issue. It's going to require a lot of study, but if you look at the results in West Bengal, it seems as if the BJP's vote share did in fact decline in the last couple of phases, which is when the intensity of the COVID pandemic, the second wave, really picked up. Now, a lot of people have said, well, it's not clear that it's COVID because these were phases where the BJP wasn't expected to do particularly well. These are places that were Trinamool strongholds. Do we have a sense at all if COVID really impacted voter decision-making this time around?
This is something I've been grappling with myself to understand, and I'm afraid I have not understood this. First of all, management of the pandemic or mismanagement of it was not an issue in the election at all. I did not see any statements or any speeches which spoke specifically either about Mamata Banerjee's mishandling of the whole COVID crisis or Mamata Banerjee supporters charging that the center was not sending them vaccines or was not acting in time, or that the medical facilities were inadequate because the center did not step in, or oxygen ran out because of the center's mismanagement. I haven't seen any of that. So, it's quite surreal because you have this crisis, this public health devastating epidemic. People are dropping dead in the middle of the street. People are dropping dead outside hospitals because they can't get in, and yet they apparently hold no one to account and blame it on no one. So it's quite a bizarre situation, but I'm not sure if the COVID issue played on the minds of people at all when they went to press that button. If you look at the turnout was higher than the turnout in the last election. People turned out in huge numbers to vote, 86%, 75%, 78% coming out and voting. Almost as if there was this urge, this kind of pent up sort of feeling that they wanted to express through the button that they pressed. Uh, what was behind it, I really don't know. We need to do much more research on the ground, and but this much is true that the management of the pandemic did not play a role in the campaign at all.
Aditi, let me bring this conversation to an end by asking you another speculative question, but based on your own judgment and assessment, where do political parties go from here, namely the BJP and the opposition? How does the BJP shape the narrative? It is facing harsh criticism from the international media. It is facing increasingly harsh criticism from the domestic media, especially digital media and on social media. Mr. Modi has become the subject of mockery on any number of WhatsApp memes. How does the BJP pivot, and what are the steps you think the opposition is going to take? You mentioned before that we might start to see some talks go on behind the scenes between dissenting congressmen who are very unhappy with the way the direction of the Congress party is headed. Maybe reach out to other regional leaders like Mamata Banerjee, Sharad Pawar, and others. Where do you see these two elements headed?
Well, the BJP is obviously a little defensive. The Sangh is also asking itself whether it has done everything it can do within its power to, as you know, supposedly the world's biggest socio-political, socio-cultural organization, whether it has done everything it could have done to help out during this time of crisis, and whether it's been visible at all. I saw that Mr. Tejasvi Surya, who's the MP for Bangalore, has given and is also the chief of the Bharatiya Yuva Janata Morcha, has given a call as late as April 2021 to start helplines manned by the Bharatiya Yuva Janata Morcha, which should have been in the front line, right? It should have been out on the streets, helping people. Modi hinted as much when he, in his all his later messages to the nation, where he said, "Mere नौजवानों को कुछ नहीं होगा. I expect young people to go out and help people get vaccinated, etc." Well, the response to that has come almost a year after the pandemic has raged over India and taken millions of lives. So where were all these people all this time? But these are all questions which no doubt people will begin asking. Modi, did this happen because of omissions and commissions of Modi? Whether it did or not, people are not ready to believe this. And frankly, international media, the more it reviles Modi, the more nationalist Modi supporters are going to get, and the more strong is going to be the response in nationalist terms. We are already seeing some of that in evidence. So I think the pandemic and its handling as a political issue we have not seen the last word on it. As far as the opposition is concerned, I think there is going to be some realignment of forces. Mamata Banerjee had written a letter to all leaders of oppositions saying that we need to come together to halt the march of the BJP. To my knowledge, very few opposition leaders have responded to that letter beyond a "thank you for your letter dated such and such so and so, and we will get back to you" in that sort of a tone. So now that matter will be addressed, and now that she is resurgent and not overly bothered about whether she becomes Chief Minister of Bengal again or not, she is going to take the lead. And well, I mean, I think if people feel that they need another opposition. Already Sharad Pawar has flagged the issue of UPA being led from the front, and the change in the UPA, which is not a formal body in the sense that the Congress leads it by dint of being the largest party in the opposition in the Lok Sabha. But that doesn't always have to be the case. So there will be some sort of a realignment of forces. It may take a few weeks, maybe a month, maybe more months. But I think the monsoon session of Lok Sabha will be very interesting to watch.
My guest on the show today is Aditi Phadnis. She is the political editor at the Business Standard newspaper. I think, Aditi, you have proven why you are such a resource and font of knowledge on state and national politics. I would just point out to our listeners that in the last 24 hours, Aditi's byline appears on not one or two, but 4 separate articles on the meaning of these state election results. Both at the national level as well as state by state. We'll link to all of those pieces in the show notes. Aditi, I know that both for you personally as well as for your friends and family, this has been an extremely stressing time. We can't thank you enough for taking the time and sharing some of your insights with us today.
I'm deeply honored. Thank you very much.
Grant Tamasha is a co-production of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and the Hindustan Times. This podcast is an HT Smartcast original and is available on htsmartcast.com, India's fastest-growing podcasting producing platform. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to rate and review. It helps others find the show more easily. For more information about the show and to find the writing we referenced on this week's episode, visit our website, granttamasha.com. Production assistance comes from Jonathan Kay, Tim Martin is our audio engineer, and Cliff Jayapranada is our executive producer. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.
This was a Hindustan Times production brought to you by HT Smartcast.
HT Smartcast.